For the next chapter, we are going to study middle distance. I'm going to use two techniques that everyone from AUJ use a lot, and I use a lot throughout my career. My brother also used a lot. It's De La Riva and reverse De La Riva. And the main question is like, what we classify as middle distance. Like before we saw near distance, and the example that I gave you guys was that the hip had to be connected. I should be connected to my opponent. That's why I use the closed guard as an example. Like pretty much like most of the submissions, they're gonna happen from the near distance because you have a very strong connection to your opponent. The middle distance, you're gonna have a lot of control because you're not as close as the near distance, but you have control of the legs. So normally you can, it's pretty easy to off balance your opponent. It's a very good distance for you to create a lot of the back attacks that you guys see nowadays, and a lot of the sweeps, because it's very easy to do transitions from one guard to the other. One thing that I like a lot about middle distance is that your hip is free. So normally you have grips on the collar that are able to break the posture, and you have the hooks normally on the legs. And because your hip is free, you have a lot of mobility. And in my opinion, this guard, whenever you have either reverse De La Riva or you have De La Riva, you have a very safe spot because you have your hands and you have your legs fighting against your opponent. So normally, whenever you understand the distance well and you get good playing this guard, it's very hard to pass, because to pass your guard, your opponent needs to get rid of the arms and the legs, which is very difficult. I'm gonna show a lot of the details that I had planned to show to you guys from this distance, and for every technique, I will bring different concepts that I like to apply whenever I have this distance. The first technique is probably the one that we use the most here. We use as a warm-up, we use a lot of times in the end of the class. It's De La Riva guard retention drill. There's a lot of like small details that I'm gonna show you guys, and in the end, whenever you understand all the details and you're able to read your opponent's reaction, it becomes very easy for you to defend your guard. So normally, whenever I'm playing De La Riva, I have a cross grip on the collar, and I have control of his legs, so either the pants or his ankle. One leg I'm using to control his leg, so I have the hook. A very important detail for this, for the De La Riva, is the use of my toes. So I cannot just place my foot there and relax. What I need to do is I need to be always applying pressure on his knee. So whenever I have the hook, I'm always flexing with my knee on the inside like this. A lot of people ask me like if I'm always pulling the collar. I feel I get a strong grip there and I just hang on the collar. And based on how hard my opponent is trying to break the grip and he's fighting to posture up, I will respond with pressure pulling him. Okay, so it's not like constant pressure. It's more of like a reaction. So every time I try to posture up, he's trying to posture up, I keep it heavy. My other foot is very active. So normally on the biceps, if the person is getting too close to me, I can step on the leg, and then I try to get back to the foot on the biceps. The reason why I like to have the foot on the biceps is because my opponent normally is trying to jump over my leg. So if my foot is down like this, he's going to be jumping over my leg. With the foot on the biceps, it becomes much harder for him to break the frame, and it's very hard for him to use this hand in order to set up a grip to pass. Let's go through the scenario where my opponent was able to escape from the hook here, and he jumps over my leg. Normally, the mistake that people make here is like to let go of the De La Riva and start pushing. Whenever you do that, you're gonna step on the mat and you stop playing guard for a second, and that's the movement that your opponent needs to start passing. So what we train here is that every time the person jumps over my leg, I replace the De La Riva hook with the inside leg. Now I'm pinching his knee with my legs, and I'm using my whole body, the grips that I have and my legs, to make him post the hands on the mat. By creating this move, and now I'm able to move my leg out and readjust my angle, setting up the De La Riva again. So again, like jump over, he jumps over, I switch the hook, I create a strong frame here. And very important too, I don't want him to slide his knee down and start applying pressure. So whenever I put my hook on the inside here, this knee is blocking his knee from going to the mat. Again, so he jumps over, I block, and now I off balancing. So my whole body is off balancing him, and then I readjust my guard. One detail that I always talk about in class, and I believe to be very important, and maybe the reason why we are so successful from the De La Riva, is that you have to be off balancing your opponent the whole time. Whenever your opponent doesn't feel uncomfortable, they'll be attacking you, they're gonna be trying to break your grip. So it's important that the whole time you're playing guard, you're either making your opponent post the hands on the mat, or you're making your opponent post their hands on you. So whenever we are in the De La Riva, let me do one more time and finish this example. If I get my grips, I can't get the grips and stop here, because his next movement will be an attack where he's gonna be trying to escape. So the whole time I'm playing De La Riva, I'm active off balancing. So either pulling and making him post, or pushing, making him post the hands on the mat. It's always an uncomfortable scenario for him. So now, like, whenever you guys watch the fights, it's very important to recognize that how uncomfortable the person on top is. And because of that, they're not able to create strong attacks. For the second technique, we're gonna connect the De La Riva to one leg X. This is a technique that we also use a lot. And the detail that I showed in the last move of using the De La Riva to make your opponent post the hands on the mat will be used in this technique as well. So it's very important that your opponent is off balance, is posting the hands on the mat in order for this technique to be successful. Another thing that's really important, that I always talk about this to my students, is that you need to have two sets of sweeps. One, where you're building your sweep, it takes like a couple steps, and like you go from, normally you have the opportunity to take the back, or you build the sweep step by step, saving a lot of energy. And the second style, it's explosive style, where you do the techniques normally like shorter, it's less steps, and it's much faster to apply this technique. And as a competitor, you need to have these two styles, because it's important to have the style where you build the technique and you save a lot of energy, because normally a black belt fights for 10 minutes, and the more energy you can save, the better you're gonna be. And it's important also to have the set of explosive sweeps, because a lot of times you have like 30 seconds, 1 minute, and that's that last minute of the fight, the last 30 seconds, is gonna be what's gonna decide the fight. And if you don't have an explosive sweep or an explosive submission to attack, like, it will be really hard for you to get that win. So I always talk about having these two styles, where you can have your preference to build techniques and save energy, but whenever time comes, you need to be explosive and you need to be very efficient with this style of techniques. So normally we start from the De La Riva using the same control we had before. I have a grip on the collar, I have a grip on the pants, I have my De La Riva strong and tight. I have the foot on the biceps. In case he's jumping over, I will be doing the retention and making him post the hands on the mat and trying to reset the guard. The main detail here is that I need him to be posting on that side. So now all the weight's on his foot here. The front foot's really heavy and it's hard for me to move. In order for me to succeed with this sweep, I need to make him put all the weight on this side here. So normally I start moving, using my hip to scoop his leg, start doing this. And I recognize when I have it when his foot's off the ground. So if his foot's off the ground, doesn't matter if my foot is on the biceps or on his hip. Now I use my hip here to support his foot while I circle my foot and I use this hook here. This hook is going to be important for me because it's going to give me the ability to elevate his leg even more. And the more I elevate his leg, the more weight's going to go down to his arms. So let's reset. I have very good guard retention. His front foot is really heavy on the mat and I'm having trouble to sweep him. So I focus on putting all the weight on that side. Look how I move my hip in order to support his foot. At this moment, I can keep the De La Riva or I can start pulsing on his hip here because I want to be pushing him to that side. Now I circle my foot, I create the hook. I don't let my leg slide all the way here. Okay, a lot of people do this and it's gonna help your opponent to put weight on you and put your back on the mat. So normally, whenever I do this technique, I have my knee connected to my chest and I have just the hook elevating his leg. Now whenever I have this position, I just need to gain momentum so I can stand up. So normally from here, like keep fighting, John, like he's moving, look, I'm just like maintaining in there. Even if for a second I touch my back on the mat or I go on this side, I just readjust myself and pull the leg up again. And now look, whenever I push him, I'm gonna do almost like a technical stand-up. So I push him and I do this. I keep the grip on the pants, I keep the grip on the collar, and I start standing up. This technique normally ends up as a takedown. You can stand up and have a single leg. Depending on your opponent's reaction, if they're posting the hands, you can attack the back. Or a lot of times the person, they see that they're exposing their back a lot and they accept the sweep and they go straight on bottom. But the most important for us is to understand the details. So whenever you're doing the technique, you can see how close you are from succeeding with the move. A lot of people, when they're doing this technique, they're not understanding where the opponent's weight is, and it becomes much harder for them to do the technique. So like, the first thing that I think when I'm doing this technique is like, is my opponent's weight on me or on the ground? If the opponent's weight is on the ground, I know I can have the position and it becomes much easier for me. For the first two techniques, I was using the De La Riva and my opponent was jumping over my leg, normally the free leg, in order to start a knee slide or to get close to pass my guard. For this third technique, it's when the opponent is going to the opposite direction. They're pushing my De La Riva hook down and going over the De La Riva. It's also a technique that I really like to do on top. And I teach this technique a lot. I see a lot this technique being used nowadays, so that's why it's so important for us to understand how to react to that. Because normally, like, people make the mistake of just resetting their guard whenever the person is using this kind of attack. They get scared and they let go everything and start pushing. And to me, whenever I have my grips in the De La Riva and the opponent is going over my leg, I feel that I have the opportunity to switch to near distance and lock a submission. And that's what I want to show you guys. And it's really important because this technique will show us the ability to go from middle distance to near distance for a submission. And we're gonna use that a lot. Every time you are in middle distance, it'll be very hard for you to get a submission from that distance because there's a lot of space between you and your opponent. But if you switch fast from middle distance to near distance just to catch a submission, and you have this understanding of switching the distance first, you're gonna be very successful with that. So normally, I start with the collar and the pants. I have a very strong frame. I can be using all the techniques that we were doing before. If the person jumps over, I frame. But now let's say he's trying to pass to this side and he was not able to pass to this side because I'm doing a very good job stepping on the biceps and framing, and every time he jumps I reset my guard. Now he switched his approach. He starts going over the De La Riva. And whenever he goes over the De La Riva, now my leg is smashing my own arm. And this is the main thing that happens in this situation. People, they see this situation happen, they feel that their arm is locked here, and then they let go everything and they start pushing. Whenever they start pushing, now you stop playing guard and you're just defending, and the person can have the chance to pass your guard. So normally I tell the students to stay attached to the grips. So he's jumping over. Now, I have the grips, but he's on top of my leg. What I need to do, I need to use an extra push to bring his knee up. Now look, his knee is on the mat. Whenever I start pushing, his knee, it's going up. That's when I have the opportunity to step over. So before I was here, his knee was on the mat. I start pushing him, the knee goes up, I go with my leg on top. This is the detail that I want to show you guys, because my opponent at this point here, he's trying to get back on top, because if he doesn't come back on top, he's very far from me, I'm going to be able to sweep him. So I'm going to start pulling my leg out, and I'm going to be able to sweep. In order to defend the sweep, what they do, they start coming on top. But now my leg's in front of his knee, so he's not defending anymore. I can use the detail that we learned in the near distance. I use my leg to break his control. And now I do the transition from middle distance to near distance. I was able to connect myself to him. I can start the submission. One more time. I have my control. He's trying to jump over my leg. I'm doing a good job defending, and he was not successful on that side. He switched and he started attacking this side. He's trapping my own leg now, my own arm, and I know I can't let go of the grips here and start pushing because he's going to start attacking me. So I push him in order to bring his knee up, and I have space to move my leg on top of his leg. So normally I start doing this. My leg goes on top of his leg. I wait for him to come up. When he comes on top, now before I had De La Riva, now I have my leg across his hip, which is very strong. Normally the person, they try to block my hip, and they use the hand on my hip like this. If he's not doing that, it will be even easier for me to step on his biceps. But normally that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to block my hip. I go with the knee over, I break the grip like we did in near distance. And now I go from middle distance to near distance first. Now I can choose any submission from here that I like to attack. So now, before I did a triangle, now I'm going to start attacking normal plata. The main lesson from this technique is that it's important for us to recognize that while you're framing your guard and you have the De La Riva, you're in middle distance, there's a lot of space, there's a lot of movement there. Whenever you make a decision of shooting a submission, the first thing is closing that gap. The first thing is switching from middle distance to near distance. Once I have near distance, then I have the possibility of finishing the fight. This next technique that I'm gonna show is another great example of switching from middle distance to near distance in order to attack a submission. I decided to show a leg attack now. We're gonna start with the toe hold and connect it to the knee bar. It's a technique that I really like to use in training. And it's very different. That we did a lot of upper body attacks when we were doing close guard. I did a couple now in the middle distance. I'm gonna show you guys how I like to connect with the leg attack now. I'm still using the same control and same concepts now, regardless if the person is trying to pass to this side or this side. Now you guys already know how to react to that. So it's very important to build that shield where it doesn't matter what the opponent's trying to do, they always get back to the same spot in front of your guard. One thing that I like to focus on here is that I try to maintain my opponent in between my legs like this. If my opponent starts getting around and he starts attacking the side, I'll be in trouble. So I reset the guard and I keep him always in between my legs. This is a good spot for me to be with my opponent here because it will be very hard for him to attack. Whenever I decide to attack his legs, I'll have to do the same thing that I did before. I need to make him stop pushing me and using the hands and start posting the hands on the mat because the hands will be busy, and normally whenever he's posting the hands on the mat, the legs are going to be very light, and that's exactly what I need in order to connect myself to his legs. So from here, I'm going to be trying to make him post his hands on the mat. For this position, I like to circle my leg and go with the leg all the way on the inside like this. Now I bring my leg back on the hip. So I create this position here. Normally we do one leg X, but it's just for the back attack, for the leg attack. Whenever I'm in this position, normally the person is now trying to put their weight back on me. So it's important that now you have the foot pushing and the hand on the collar. You maintain the foot right on top of your hip, so the foot cannot be on the ground. Every time his foot's on the ground, move your hip out and keep the foot off the ground. I start the technique with one hand, so whenever I do this, I connect his hand, and the problem here is that I'm facing his head, and it will be very hard for me to attack the toe hold. So the first thing that I do in this position, I try to readjust my hip in order to face his foot. So I'm here, I can be moving and framing the guard the same way. Now I'm gonna do this. Whenever I readjust, look how my leg is created a triangle here on his leg. And a lot of people ask, when I attack my opponent's leg, normally they try to attack my leg. So it's very important that you keep your foot attached to the stomach. So if you guys pay attention, my foot's on his stomach like this, make it really hard for me to find my foot. Now my hand goes on top of his leg, and whenever I lock it, look, I pass my hand over his leg. Whenever I lock it, I like to grab really close to my wrist and flex it first. Okay, so normally I'm not trying to bend his leg, I'm trying to flex my grips in order to get a good grip. One thing that I always think about this technique is that my opponent, if they know how to react, they're going to start spinning because I don't have a very strong lock on his leg. So whenever I start attacking, he's going to spin, and that's exactly what I want to finish the knee bar, because now when he spins, his knee's still on the inside. I can control his heel and start finishing, or what I can do, I throw my arm over and I put his foot under my armpit. Even if I don't have a very strong triangle here, just by pinching my legs, so his knee is right on my stomach, just by pinching my legs here, I will have a strong lock. Again. I start from the De La Riva. I'm framing. The first thing that I want to do is to make him post the hand so the foot is off the ground and the legs become really light. So I start pushing him to the side. I circle my foot, I do the transition to one leg X, connecting myself to him. Still have a good frame. Remember that the person will be trying to post their foot on the mat like this in order to smash you. Every time he does that, I move my hip out and I keep his foot off the ground. I initiate the technique with the first grip. After I have that, I still have the grip on the collar. I move my hip out and I slide my foot. Now I have my foot protected on his stomach and I have this triangle here. Very good angle so I can see his foot. Remember, whenever you attack, you flex the position first. I want to finish. A lot of times like you're gonna attack and the person will attack fast because the angle is really strong. If he doesn't attack fast, he's gonna try to turn. And at this time I was able to escape my leg and then I end up with a very strong triangle here. I can finish here or I can throw my arm over and finish it with the arm, with the leg under the armpit. There's a lot of variations that we can use for these techniques. The most important for me is to show you guys that you have middle distance, and in order for you to attack a submission, it doesn't matter if it is an upper body attack or a lower body attack, you have to do this transition to near distance. So I used the middle distance to show some of my favorite attacks from the De La Riva. Now we're gonna do reverse De La Riva. To me, they're very similar. The use of the hooks and the use of the grip to break the opponent's posture, it's very important. And they have to connect really well. A person that normally does De La Riva, they also understand reverse De La Riva because you're gonna face the situation of your opponent jumping over your leg pretty much every time you use the De La Riva. And these two techniques are gonna be a way for you to connect them and push. Like if the person jumps over your leg and now you see yourself in reverse De La Riva, you can use that strong reverse De La Riva to put you back to the De La Riva game. And that's normally what we try to do in the academy. Whenever we have reverse De La Riva, we have a lot of attacks from there, but mostly like the idea of that move is to create a strong shield so you can create enough space to go back to the De La Riva. So initiating the position from the reverse De La Riva here. The most important for me to understand here is that the person is using their knee and their knee cannot touch the ground. So normally he's in the knee slide position already and his knee cannot touch the mat. If I don't use the hook properly, the first thing that's gonna happen is that I'm gonna end up in the half guard. So this is the biggest difference between reverse De La Riva and half guard, is the use of this hook and the control that you have of your opponent's leg. So it's with a lot of control here versus whenever you have half guard, you're pretty much just using your upper body to find space. The second leg here, normally we use to control the distance. I have my foot on the biceps. If the person on top is doing a good job pushing my foot down, I can use my hook behind his shoulder, or I can use my foot on the hip. So this foot's always moving and trying to gain control. My hands are normally in the cross collar, and the other hand will be protecting my head. We use a lot of the grip on the wrist. So if I develop this control and I build this shield here, it'll be very easy for me to off balance my opponent. So start putting pressure like if you're trying to pass. When he's trying to pass, it's very hard for him to penetrate the guard because his shoulder is away from me. I'm using a very strong grip on the collar and my arm is creating this retention. The fact that I'm controlling his hand makes him unable to hug my head. So if I don't have this control, the person's gonna start controlling my head or grabbing my collar. So I'm always controlling here. So let's say he controls my collar, a situation that can happen a lot whenever you're framing for reverse de la riva. I'm always using my hand on the inside and pushing against the biceps, because now when I stretch my arm, I'm gonna use my shoulder to pop the grip. And then I go back with the hand on the grip, or with the hand on the wrist. This leg here is also doing a very good, a very strong work, pushing him to the mat and off balancing him. Just like the de la riva, we need to be moving our opponent and make them feel uncomfortable. So if I stop here and I don't create any situation where he's posting the hands on the mat or falling on his hip, he'll be putting pressure forward until he passes. But whenever I have reverse de la riva, keep putting pressure forward. I'm always off balancing him. And that's when I'm gonna have the chance to create enough space so I can go back to the de la riva. The reverse de la riva is a good technique for me to show the use of the elbow and the knees as well. A lot of times I talk about this a lot in the class. A lot of times people just think about framing their guard using their hands and their feet. But whenever the person starts getting closer, it's very important that you use your elbows, your forearm, in order to protect yourself, especially because, especially at the high level, your hands are gonna be busy with a grip. Your feet will be controlled by your opponent because they're normally trying to push your foot down, trying to escape from the hook, and you're gonna have to use your knees. So let's go back to the reverse de la riva. So normally, if my hands are busy and he's putting pressure on me, look how my forearm and my elbow are helping me to create this strong line. I also use my knee and my elbow connected like this. This is also very important. Look how my elbow supports my knee. Whenever you lose this structure in your guard and the person starts smashing your knees, then it's easy to pass your guard. So normally we talk about using the arms to create support and creating lines like this where the person cannot attack you. Same thing we use for the bottom leg. So if my leg gets here and start getting tired, normally my foot, his knees gonna start pushing my knee down and he's gonna be able to slide. If I'm able to use this hand to support my leg, now I have a very strong shield. So my one arm is supporting my top leg and my other arm is supporting my bottom leg. Right? I feel really strong in this position. I have a very tight shield and it's easy for me to start off balancing him. For the next technique, I'm gonna use the reverse de la riva to get under my opponent's legs and connect to the X guard. This is also a technique that it's a huge part of our game here at AOJ. And the fact that I'm able to off balance my opponent from the reverse de la riva, it gives me the chance to set up the X guard. So if you use the details that we worked in the last technique where you have a strong frame, you have your elbows and arms supporting your knees, and whenever the person is pressuring forward, you're able to make them post their legs and you off balance them, the X guard will be very easy to enter. So reverse de la riva, good control using all the details that I showed you guys, elbow supporting the knees. Very good control, like off balance him. Now, my goal will be to move this leg closer to me. And this is a technique that we use, like I use since I was purple belt. Like I have a good control. I use my leg to push him. Whenever I do that, his head's gonna go down and he's gonna respond to that by putting pressure on me. Just like any other technique in Jiu-Jitsu, like you need to think about your opponent's reaction whenever you're doing the move. So whenever I push him to the side, I already know that he's trying to push all the way back to the center. And that's when I'm gonna pull him and the leg's gonna get much closer. So whenever I do this, he's pulling the head closer, I pull him. Look how he's on top of me now, but all my knees and my arms are supporting on his weight. Now, I let go the arm, I control the leg, and I start turning my knees to the inside. At the same time, I push the collar. Now all the weight's on the mat, like he's posting his hands. I start pushing him further and adjusting my legs so I can create a very strong frame for the X guard. We initiate the position with a very strong control. I'm able to off-balance him. I create the action and reaction. So whenever I push him, he's giving the right reaction by putting his head in the center. Whenever I feel him doing that, I pull him closer and I close the space, bring him on top of my knees. A big mistake here would be to extend my legs. If I extend my legs, I'll be in the half guard. So it's very important to stay strong with the base and this structure here. I let go the hand, I get the underhook and I start pushing him further. Now look how my knee is creating space. Step on the leg, move my hip out, and I have a very strong X guard control. I'm ready to either stand up or start attacking the back. I decided to show this one because it's a situation that happened to me a lot in competitions, especially in the black belt, and happens to me a lot in training, especially when the person is able to get to reverse the La Riva. So I have middle distance, I'm playing the La Riva and reverse the La Riva, I'm trying to off balance my opponent, and the person is having a hard time to jump over my leg and to pass over my legs, and they start getting under my legs, normally using double unders or under over. And in the beginning, that was a big problem for me because I felt that I had a lot of control, and then whenever the person started getting under my legs, they start putting a lot of pressure and they were able to get to good positions. Whenever I start training this technique and understanding all the possibilities from there, it became a very strong attack for me. So now a lot of times, like when I'm playing guard, I give my opponent the chance to go to the under over in order for me to attack sweeps and submissions from there. So this is something that is important for us to talk about and for you to keep in mind too. A lot of times, like you're gonna use techniques, like you're gonna use it as a trap for your opponent to initiate a move. And whenever they initiate the move, you're gonna catch them. So whenever I'm playing reverse La Riva and the La Riva and I'm having a hard time to attack, where I feel they're moving too much and I'm losing control, I start letting the opponent get a little bit closer, and they're trying to go from middle distance to near distance on top. And I allow them to get a little bit closer and then attack them halfway. So this is the technique that I use a lot. Let's go to the side. Let's say he's trying to pass my guard and he was able to get to under over. He gets to under over. The first thing that I want you guys to understand here is the frame. So it's not like the reverse de la Riva. A lot of times you don't have the hook under, the person's already on their knees, and their shoulder is putting pressure on you. If you don't control the angle in this position, what's gonna happen is that the person will have two options. They can start pressing with this shoulder and pass to this side, or they can start going with the arm across and pass to this side here. So the first thing that I do from this technique here, I don't like to be on my back. So I always turn sideways and I build a frame. So I turn sideways and I build a frame. Normally gripping the triceps like this. Keep moving, trying to pass, John. He's here trying to pass, like I'm framing. So I don't let him push my knee down. So my knee is normally out like this. The person will be trying to push your knee down, so keep pushing my knee down. So every time he pushes my knee down, I use this leg here to off balance him, and I get my knee back in. And I keep controlling. It's almost like I had a triangle, but it's not locked because my foot's in between his legs. So I keep this frame really strong. My main attack from this technique will be the shoulder drag. So keep the pressure forward, like if you're trying to pass. If he's putting a lot of pressure, I go with the hand in front like this. If he's on his knees and trying to control my leg more, I can have the grip on the triceps. The detail here is that before I do the shoulder drag, I try to create this support here. And now I'm gonna slide my leg down and I'm gonna grip the triceps. Like 4 fingers can go under the armpits here. So I go like this. The detail for the technique is for a second, you're gonna be on your back, but then now I stretch my leg and I turn my hip to the inside and my knee to the inside like this. Whenever I do that, my knee gets under his stomach or close to his ribs like this, and I do transition to the belt. So before my hand was here, now I try to grip the belt. Because whenever I grip the belt, I'll have a very good control so I can pull myself up in this position. And then from here, like you have a lot of options that you can use. A lot of times I switch the grip and I start the sweep. From this position, if I feel I have good control of his arm, I can start lifting my hip, initiating a back attack or a crucifix. But the most important is that I bring his head across and his head goes to the mat again. First thing, don't stay flat, stay sideways, building the frame. Try to make your opponent uncomfortable too if he's putting a lot of pressure on you. Like keep moving, always using your legs. Whenever I decide to attack, I slide my leg, I go with the hand on the triceps or 4 fingers on the armpit, and I stretch my leg, moving my hip out. Whenever I get to this position, I start climbing up. You can hug the back or you can grab the belt. You can initiate the back attack, you can go straight to the legs. So it's important for us to understand that attacks like the under over or double unders, they will happen because the person will start getting frustrated passing your guard. They feel that it's hard to pass over the legs in the De La Riva or reverse De La Riva, and they will switch to going under your legs. So that's why it's really important for you to have a counter attack from that position that will give you the chance to attack submissions and attack the back whenever you're there. The same way that I showed some of my favorite attacks, submission attacks from the De La Riva, I'm going to show from reverse De La Riva. One thing that I like to keep in mind here is that because the person is already pressuring forward, it's important that I don't give up my control in order to get a submission. So I see a lot of people like trying to do a Kimura, for example, from this position. And in my opinion, it becomes really risky because you give up your control and now the person is closing all the distance and closing the space. So you're gonna find yourself in a situation where you either finish the fight or you're gonna be in a really bad position. That's normally not the way I like to fight. I'm very, to me it's very important that I create this shield. I'm able to attack and go back to the shield without having a lot of problems. Like I don't like to be in a situation where I have to use a move, and if that move doesn't work, I'll end up in a really bad position. So normally to create a submission attack from here, I will have to use this leg to block his head. Because right now what's happening is that he's pressuring forward with the head and with his knee. So the closer the head gets to my upper body or my head, the harder it will be for me to push him because now I don't have space. So normally what I do from here is that I start off balancing him and I'm gonna throw this leg over the same way we did before. I can throw over this arm, and now I throw over the head, creating this move here. Whenever I get here, now his arm is exposed because he's in a position where it's very hard for him to pass to this side, so I start passing, turning the corner, because I still have my hook on the inside of the leg, and it's very hard to pass to this side too because my leg is pushing him to that side and I have my arm. So he's in an uncomfortable position with the arm normally exposed. Keep the grip on my pants. Yeah. Normally the person, they still have this grip on the pants here in order to control my leg or to fight that, to jump, to escape and move side to side. And this is the perfect grip for me. Even if he doesn't have, I'll be able to attack. But normally this is the situation that I face where he has this grip and his elbow has this angle. So I'm gonna go from this position here to underhooking his arm. So now I have my leg over, I have the underhook with his elbow close to me, and I have the grip on the collar. What I need to do here is just to create the angle so I can slide this leg in. So from this position here, I start moving my hip out, and now I throw this leg here over. I don't like to commit to the arm bar. Normally what I do, I get to this position and I focus on controlling his shoulder. Normally, start putting pressure on me, John. Like normally what the person is doing, like they're trying to apply pressure or control their own arm here, or get a grip on me. What I'm gonna do is like, I'm gonna adjust my hip. Right now, my hip is on the mat. What I need to do is I need to post my shoulder on the mat. You can have a grip on the pants, you can have a grip on the knee or on the belt. I'm gonna start pulling myself on top of me. I'm gonna start doing this. And this hook here can help a lot too. If my foot's on the inside, I use my hook on the other side and I start moving my hip out like this. Now my hip is right on top of his shoulder. Keep the grip there. So let's say the person is very strong and they keep their hand connected like this. I stay attached to him. I start going belly down until I have my shoulder on the mat, my hip up, and he's connecting his hands. What I do now, I go with my hand on top of his wrist and I start twisting the hand. Now double grip on the wrist, I can finish from here, or if he's trying to escape, he does a front roll. One detail that I like to use for this position is that I use this leg here on this side of the shoulder. I feel like that gives me a very good control of his shoulder. So normally I end up here and then this leg here goes over. Okay, a regular armbar normally is like this. And the only problem with having that is that sometimes the person is able to start pushing your leg on the inside like this and you end up with one leg locked and a lot of space. Whenever you're able to throw this leg over, you hide your leg and you eliminate that opportunity that the person has to open up your legs. One more time. I showed the armbar as an example because I really like to use this technique. But to me, the most important is that whenever you're going from middle distance to near distance from the reverse de la Riva, you create a shield first. So normally for this technique, I'm using my leg. So even if I don't succeed with the submission, with that control, I have the chance to keep fighting and reset my guard. If I use an example like I showed you guys, the Kimura from the reverse de la Riva, and I find myself in that situation where I either finish the fight or the person will get to a good position. That style of fighting is very risky, and then especially for competitors, like is not the right approach, because you can either finish the fight, but if you don't finish, you're gonna find yourself losing the match. And the approach that we normally have is to play safe and go for the attack, but always go back to the comfort zone, so it's much easier for you to stay consistent in the fight. For this last technique from middle distance, I decided to show a way to defend my guard when the opponent is attacking. And it can be applied from De La Riva or reverse De La Riva. And it gives us a different component to talk about. Now I'm going from, before when I was attacking, I was going from middle distance to near distance to close the gap and attack my opponent. I'm gonna do the opposite in order to defend my guard. I'm gonna go to far distance. So the more space I create, the better it will be for me in order to reset the guard. So this is the main advantage of using middle distance, and this is the main reason why we like it so much and we use it as our main distance from the bottom, is because you have this opportunity to close the distance whenever you want to, and you have the opportunity to also create more space if the person is pressuring forward and is trying to pass your guard with near distance. So let's go to a scenario where I was playing De La Riva or reverse De La Riva, it doesn't really matter. And John was able to escape from my legs and he lands on top of my hip. This is a situation that it's very common, and it can happen even if you have a very strong guard retention. The person was able to succeed with their attack and they end up here. With both of the attacks, both of the guards, De La Riva and reverse De La Riva, I have a cross grip on the collar. So I'm gonna try to maintain it. So let's go back there. It doesn't matter if it was De La Riva or reverse De La Riva, I already had that grip on the collar. So whenever he started attacking me, I'm trying to use that frame to defend. And now the other hand, I try to pulse my elbow on the mat. And why I'm doing that? Because like every time I lift my head and I'm pulsing my elbow, I'm pushing him towards my hip. What I don't want in this scenario here is that the person climbs up and pin my shoulders on the mat. So every time I have the opportunity, I'm gonna use this grip to push him down, and I'm gonna pulse. First pulsing my elbow, and then if I can, I pulse my hand. And a situation that happens here a lot, and people always ask me, is that they do a hip escape and the person keeps following them until they're able to reach the arms. So try to reach the arms with your hands, and then they pin you down. What I like to do here, I know I have to go to far distance, so I'm gonna use my hip to frame the guard. So I have the hand here. I'm not gonna be able to use my other hand. I'm not gonna be able to use my legs because I need to use my foot on the mat in order to move. So I'm gonna start lifting my hip as high as possible to create a room between me and the mat. So I start doing this. Normally keep pressuring down, like he's gonna be trying to push my hip on the mat again. And I can do that multiple times. But whenever I have the opportunity, I'm gonna do this. Like I push him, and now I bend my knees in order to load up, and then I pull myself further. I'm gonna have far distance now. So I went from middle distance to almost near distance because he was attacking me, and now I have far distance. Now from here I can make a decision between going back to middle distance, or if I don't like that, I can start closing the guard and have him like in a tighter position where he can't move. That would be a good option if the person is moving too much, going side to side, and you're not able to control them. And whenever you go to near distance, it will be much harder for them to move. So let's do again. Let's go from reverse De La Riva now, just to show the example from reverse De La Riva. He was able to slide over, jump over my legs while he's smashing my hip down. I keep the grip on the collar and I pulse my arm. Keep putting pressure, John. Just putting pressure forward. Like I have to fight to push him. So right now I feel that all his weight is on his upper body here because his hips really high. He's almost like in a tripod position. Like so, it's really heavy on my hip. I need to use my hip to push his weight back to the legs. So I need to do this, like, all the weight goes to his hip now. And then I can escape. And I reframe my guard. This is probably like the main defense that we use from middle distance, because normally when the person is trying to pass, and if they are not able to close the distance using a pressure pass, they go around your legs and control your hip. So it happens a lot. It's important that you don't panic in that position. So you're playing guard and the person was able to attack. Like, it's just important that you block then and then you readjust your guard. I like to think about this situation just like when you're playing on top and the person's able to off balance you, almost sweep, but they did not sweep you. So it's important that you face it the same way. You cannot get very frustrated because the person was able to get to that position. Because if you start feeling frustrated during the fight, then like because the person got there, normally like you're gonna get tired and it's gonna end up being really bad for you. So I like to have the approach of if the person is attacking me and they get to a position like this, it's fine. I know how to respond and I'll get back to my guard and be more efficient next time.